Will Hamilton still be a threat in 2025? Verstappen is clear, it all depends on the car. But is that really the case? Before I explain, tell me in the comments, do you think Hamilton can fight for the title in 2025? Because what you're about to discover could change your perspective. Verstappen has been clear with his opinion on Hamilton and his possible performance in 2025. For him, there is no doubt about the Briton's talent, but he leaves a key condition. Everything will depend on the car he has at his disposal. This statement, far from being a simple courtesy towards his rival, reflects a constant reality in Formula One. Throughout history, a driver's success has not only been determined by his skill behind the wheel, but also by the performance of the car he drives. To better understand this situation, it is essential to analyze similar cases in the history of Formula One. Great drivers have faced seasons where their individual talent was not enough due to the technical limitations of their team. Ayrton Senna, for example, had years in which his skill could not compensate for the lack of development of the car. Despite being considered one of the best drivers of all time, there were times when he simply did not have a competitive enough machine to fight for victories consistently. The same thing happened with Mika Häkkinen, two-time world champion with McLaren. At his peak, his speed and consistency took him to the top, but as soon as his team lost competitiveness, his results suffered. Without a car capable of fighting with Ferrari and Michael Schumacher, his room for maneuver was considerably reduced. In the case of Lewis Hamilton, the story is no different. Throughout his career, he has proven to be a driver capable of maximizing the performance of any car, but that does not mean that he has always had the necessary machinery to prevail. In 2009, for example, he went from being world champion to competing in a season where McLaren did not have the level to fight for the title. However, he found a way to stay competitive within the possibilities he had. More recently, in 2022 and 2023, with a Mercedes less dominant than in its golden era, he stayed in the fight thanks to his experience and ability to adapt. Verstappen's statement not only acknowledges Hamilton's abilities, but also exposes an undeniable truth. The level of competitiveness in Formula One depends as much on the talent of the driver as on the performance of the car. No matter how experienced or talented a driver is, if his car is not up to par with the competition, his chances of victory are drastically reduced. For 2025, this scenario becomes even more relevant due to the regulatory changes that are looming. Mercedes' ability to develop a car capable of competing with Red Bull, Ferrari and other teams will be a determining factor in Hamilton's performance. Although his talent is beyond doubt, his success will largely depend on the technical and strategic decisions of his team. The changes to Formula One regulations for 2025 could redefine the hierarchy of the grid and determine which teams will be in a position to fight for the championship. Technical regulations have always been a key factor in the evolution of the sport, and this time will be no exception. In particular, modifications to the car's aerodynamics and energy efficiency are expected to have a direct impact on the performance of the cars, forcing the teams to rethink their development strategies. One of the main aims of these changes is to improve competitiveness and reduce the gap between the leading teams and the rest of the grid. Over the past few years, Red Bull has demonstrated a clear superiority thanks to its aerodynamic dominance, while Mercedes and Ferrari have struggled to match its pace. However, with the new restrictions and technical adjustments, the teams will have to find new solutions to maintain or improve their performance. One of the most discussed aspects is the reduction of turbulence generated by the cars, which could alter the way in which the drivers manage tire degradation and overtaking. These modifications are expected to allow for closer racing and greater equality on the track, but at the same time present a challenge for the teams, who must design cars capable of maintaining high aerodynamic load without relying on the dirty air generated by their rivals. Another key factor will be the evolution of hybrid systems, which will play an even more relevant role in energy management. Optimizing power flow and energy recovery could make the difference between a competitive car and one that is not. In this sense, the teams with the greatest capacity for adaptation and development will be the ones that manage to find an advantage in the new era. The history of Formula One has shown that every regulatory change can alter the balance of power on the grid. In 2009, for example, Braun GP surprised the rest of the teams by better interpreting the new aerodynamic rules, allowing them to dominate the first half of the championship. In 2014, the arrival of the hybrid era marked the beginning of the dominance of Mercedes, which was able to develop a more efficient power unit than its competitors. More recently, the aerodynamic revolution of 2022 favored Red Bull, which managed to better interpret the rules and design a car that was better adapted to the demands of the regulations. For 2025, The key will be which teams manage to anticipate these changes and take advantage of them to develop a competitive car from the start of the season. In this context, Hamilton and Mercedes will face a challenge that goes beyond the individual talent of the driver. If the team manages to adapt better than its rivals to the new regulations, Hamilton could have a real chance of fighting for the title again. But if the changes favor other teams, the gap with Red Bull could remain or even widen, which would complicate its chances of success. The 2025 regulations will not only determine the performance of the cars, but will also test the ability of the teams to innovate and evolve in a highly competitive environment. Formula One has always been a sport of constant change, and those who manage to adapt fastest will have the advantage in the battle for the championship. Lewis Hamilton is not only recognized for his driving skills, but also for his ability to actively contribute to the development of the cars he has driven throughout his career. His role within Mercedes goes beyond being a driver who simply adapts to the conditions of his car. He is a key technical communicator who directly influences the evolution of the car, providing precise information to the engineers to optimize its performance on track. The development of a Formula One car is a complex process that requires constant interaction between drivers and engineering teams. In this regard, Hamilton has demonstrated an exceptional ability to interpret data, identify areas for improvement and transmit that information effectively to the engineers. His experience and technical knowledge allow him to provide detailed feedback on the car's stability, aerodynamic behavior, tire management and the efficiency of hybrid systems. Throughout his career, Hamilton has worked closely with his team's technical departments to refine the setup of the cars and adapt them to his driving style. During Mercedes' years of dominance in the hybrid era, his ability to understand the car's behavior in different track conditions was fundamental to maintaining the team's high level of performance. His contribution was not limited to fine-tuning the setup for races, but also influencing strategic decisions on the long-term development of the car. An emblematic case of his influence on the development of the car came in 2017 and 2018, when Ferrari presented a highly competitive car and put Mercedes' hegemony at risk. During that period, Hamilton worked alongside the engineers to improve key aspects of the car, such as traction in slow corners and efficiency in a straight line. His feedback allowed the team to fine-tune the setup and optimize performance at crucial moments in the championship. Another important example occurred in 2022, when the new aerodynamic regulations changed the behavior of the cars significantly. Mercedes faced difficulties with the phenomenon of porpoising, which affected the stability of the car at high speeds. Hamilton, together with his teammate and the engineers, played a crucial role in identifying the problem and finding solutions to mitigate its effects. His ability to analyze the car's behavior and accurately communicate his observations helped the team make progressive adjustments throughout the season to improve the car's competitiveness. In 2025, this role will be even more relevant due to changes in regulations. The implementation of new rules on aerodynamics, energy management and advanced sensors will require drivers to work more closely with engineers to make the most of new technologies. Hamilton, with his vast experience and technical knowledge, will be a key asset for Mercedes in this process. His ability to interpret real-time data and provide immediate feedback on the car's behavior in different race conditions can make all the difference in optimizing the car. The history of Formula One has shown that drivers with a technical and strategic vision have a significant impact on the performance of their teams. Michael Schumacher, for example, was a benchmark in this regard, contributing to the development of Ferrari's cars in the early 2000s. His communication with engineers and his insistence on perfecting every technical detail were key to building dominant cars for several seasons. Hamilton finds himself in a similar situation. If Mercedes can correctly interpret the new regulations and develop a competitive car, their ability to refine technical details and adapt to changes will be crucial to getting back into the championship race. Their role will not be limited to extracting maximum performance from the car on the track, but will also influence the process of evolution and improvement of the car throughout the season. In a Formula One where technology advances rapidly and the differences between teams are defined in thousandths of a second, the combination of driving talent and technical vision becomes a determining factor in the fight for victory. Verstappen's statement about Hamilton makes clear an undeniable reality in Formula One. The talent of a driver, however extraordinary, is not enough without a competitive car. Throughout history, this balance between the driver's skill and the technical development of the car has been decisive in the fight for championships. Hamilton has repeatedly demonstrated his ability to maximize the performance of any car he drives, but 2025 represents a completely new challenge. With the arrival of rule changes, The key will be which teams are able to best interpret these regulations and develop a car that allows them to compete at the highest level. If Mercedes manages to solve the problems that have affected its performance in recent years and finds the formula to design a car that is on par with Red Bull and Ferrari, Hamilton will have the opportunity to return to the top. His experience, technical knowledge, and ability to work together with engineers will be key factors in this equation. But if the team does not get its development right, the gap with its rivals could increase, limiting its chances of fighting for a new world title. Formula One has shown that, with each change in the rules, history can take unexpected turns. Teams that seemed invincible have fallen, while others have managed to re-emerge thanks to a better interpretation of the regulations. In this context, 2025 will not only be a challenging year for Hamilton, but also a test for Mercedes in its ability to adapt. So will Hamilton's talent be enough to get him back into contention for the championship, or will the technological gap continue to dictate F1's fate? The answer will depend on what happens in the coming months and how teams prepare for the future. If you're interested in learning more about how these changes could alter the grid, stay tuned for the upcoming analysis. And if you have an opinion on what could happen in 2025, share it in the comments.